Many teachers are interested in finding the ways to enhance each child's learning capacity and to determine what kind of help children need as learners. Usually, teachers evaluate their students' learning and achievements by collecting data about students' grades, learning behavior, instructions, and interventions which help to maximize students' learning capacity. Traditional assessment in classroom and testing are best known and usually used by teachers in their classrooms. Testing informs teachers what students do or do not know, how much students already have learned in comparison with others. Testing also may be useful as a signal when and where students are in trouble and needs further attention, assessment, or possible intervention. It also can provide guidelines for the further learning and teaching. However, testing doesn't inform teachers of how and why some students are not learning successfully, why they experience the difficulties, why do the students struggle. One of the possibilities to answer these questions is dynamic assessment of learning. According to Litz, the need to do assessment is not news to the teachers. What is new is dynamic assessment approach and the usefulness of how this can be done in classroom. So why and when do we choose dynamic assessment? We do dynamic assessment if we need not only make predictions from the results, but to assess the students' learning in actual present learning situations, to know not only how much do the students know, but how can students learn, not how well students have learned, but what teaching is needed to enable the students to learn successfully. So, what are main principles of dynamic assessment, how teachers can use and apply these principles in the classroom, and how they can help every child in the class to learn and to succeed? Approaches. Typically, dynamic assessment or dynamic model of assessment follows a pre-test, intervene, post-test format. First steps of dynamic assessment in pretest phase are analysis of the tasks and assessment of performance and cognitive functioning of the students. In task analysis, teachers need to answer the following and similar questions. What is content subject matter of the task? Is it familiar or novel to the students? In which modality task is presented? How complex is the task? How abstract is the task? What are the thinking skills required for the task? How quickly and accurately does the task need to be performed? Criteria of task analysis for dynamic assessment in classroom can be used in terms of Professor Feuerstein's cognitive map. Cognitive map helps to understand why and where students have the difficulties. Let's look at the classroom.
Mes žinom, kad mes kiekvienas skirtingai mąstom, kiekvienas skirtingai galvoja. Visi esam skirtingi. Todėl, vaikai, stenkitės kiekvienas atrasti savo sprendimo būdą. O po to mums paaiškinsit. Gerai? Susitarė? Dabar aš išdalinu visiems lapeles.
Students need to solve this task. In the land of beavers, there are two types of tunnels. When beavers enter a black tunnel, they leave it in a reverse order. After crossing the white tunnel, only the first and the last beaver have exchanged places. The family of beavers go through those three tunnels. In what order they will leave those tunnels? Analysis of the task in terms of cognitive map has to be done before the assessment in classroom, seeking to understand requirements of the task and possible difficulties for the students. Second step in pretest phase, seek to understand what is the present level of performance of the students without help and what are the recognizable barriers or obstacles to better learning and performance of the students. While students are solving the tasks, teacher needs to evaluate. If the students take time to gather all information, Are they precise and accurate in gathering information? If students understand how to solve the task. If students solved the task correctly. How did the student present the answer? How students can make conclusions and give a logical reason for their own view. Let's look at the classroom again.
Kur tavo sprendimas? Pijūkai, aš nematau kaip sprendimą. Kaip čia išlindo? Aš visiškai nematau. Kaip čia išlindo? Išeina kas, Tomukai, skaityk. Va čia tu ir nelabai gerai parašei. Tu sakai gerai, o parašei neminė. Tu sakai sesė, tai rašyk sesė. Ką čia? Šitą baltą karą. Paskaityk. Įsakymus karą. Baltą. Per baltą tunelį praeina. Sekėsi?
Iš pirmo tunelio išėjo sesė, brolis, mama ir tėtis.
Taip.
Iš antro balto sesė, mama, brolis, tėtis.
Jau čia kažką pametei. O kaip tau iš juodo tunelio išėjo?
Sesė, brolis, mama ir tėtis.
Sesė, brolis, mama ir tėtis. Iš juodo tunelio tau teisingai išėjo. O čia pagalvok. O tu čia pagalvok, paskaityk dar sąlygą ir čia pagalvok, gerai?
Analysis of students' cognitive functioning, learning processes is important to understand why and where certain students experience difficulties with this particular task. Professor Furstein described cognitive functions responsible for learning and thinking processes according to the three major phases of the mental act, namely input, elaboration, and output. Very important aspect of dynamic approach to assessment, the teacher systematically asks and seeks to answer questions, carefully observes and analyzes the performance of the students, evaluates what they are doing, why students experience difficulties in solving particular tasks, when the students struggle and experience difficulties. Once the teacher derives an idea of why and where the students experience difficulties, the next step is to intervene and try to induce change. Intervention and mediation depend on situation and vary with the tasks, the age of the students. Teacher in intervention phase seek to be thinking teacher, to be mediator in learning and teaching processes in classroom and seek to ensure effective and successful learning.
Nustatyti uždavinį spręsti. Bet jūs uždavinį spręsite tik tai tada, jeigu susikalbsim, rimtai galvosim, įdėmiai skaitysim, mąstysim, dėliosimės, kaip gali viskas įvykti.
Mažiausia su didžiausiu, tai tada išeina tie pirmas mažiausias, tada didesnis, tada mažesnis ir didžiausias.
Kažkas taip. O čia gerai įsižiūrėti, taigi jis išeina. Jeigu jūs būtum ne pagal dydį susižymėjęs su raidutėm arba skaičiukais, tau būtų buvę paprasčiau. Ane? Pamėgink dar kartą pagalvoti. Pamėgink pagalvoti.
During the assessment, teachers need to assess not only the task and students' cognitive functions, but also their own teaching and interventions during the learning. Have I aroused enough of students' interest and motivation? Have I used the most appropriate ways for students to understand the task? Have I used most effective ways to solve the task? Have I discussed enough of relevant strategies and the need to plan and think strategically? Have I encouraged enough to transfer what was learned to other life situations? Have I offered enough informed praise and encouragement for every student? In post-test phase, Teachers need to assess not only the number of mistakes or correct answers, but changes in students' cognitive functioning also. Maybe the students started to work in more systematic way, or started to check their own work independently. Maybe teacher has assessed increased students' attention, or more readiness to cope with a difficult task. Did the students use the strategies acquired during the lessons or problem solving? The main questions in post-test phase and in all dynamic assessment leading to better understanding of learning and teaching processes in classroom. How many and what kind of intervention were required to produce improved performance? What was the response to intervention? And what difference did my intervention and teaching make? Dynamic approach to the assessment differs from traditional and psychometric assessment methods and allows to gather information about learner that is not elicited by other approaches. Dynamic assessment let us understand how do the students learn, what might account for learning problems, and what are the most promising interventions.